Week 1 is here. No more time to be messing around, talking about other things you got going during the fall. College football is here, so we're going to lock in on that. We got a big one this Saturday, neutral site action. South Carolina, North Carolina, a little battle for the Carolinas in Charlotte. What are going to be the determining factors in the outcome of this game? Like, we're not going to predict this game right now. We're going to do that tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you're locked in. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. But what are the things that we can expect to, like I just said, have a tremendous impact on who does end up leaving Charlotte with a dub? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I think a lot of it has to come down to who plays defense. And that's kind of the obvious thing to say, right? I mean, both these units weren't great a season ago. Both allowed over 30 points a game. And I promise you, both sides of this thing are tired of hearing people like me with a microphone sit here all offseason long and say, North Carolina's not very good on defense. South Carolina's not very good on defense. Well, they're both going to have a real good chance to get after the opposing quarterback because both these quarterbacks are pretty high profile. I mean, Drake Maye might be the best quarterback in NFL draft circles, not named Caleb Williams. And even then, there's probably a discussion to be had. Spencer Rattler, the way he finished last season, got all of Columbia singing that Journey song. Don't stop believing. All right, so that's how they're feeling right now in Columbia. It's how they're feeling right now in Chapel Hill, and that's fair. But I think the next question you have to ask, past just, is anyone going to play defense? I think you have to ask, what does the tempo of this game become? Because I believe that South Carolina, with new offensive coordinator Dowell Loggins, it'll be more of a pro-style approach. And what do we know about pro-style kind of offensive attacks? They want to run the football, right? When you run the football, that clock just kind of keeps rolling, kind of keeps churning, especially with those new clock rules. Another conversation for another time, but it is what it is. So I think the interesting thing about this, if South Carolina and North Carolina don't step it up defensively, and South Carolina is able to run the kind of style they want to run offensively, the best defense for South Carolina could very well be their offense holding on to the ball and keeping it out of Drake Maye's hands. Because I've said it a couple times on this show, man, like, I think Drake Maye may be the lowest drama player to watch in all of college football. Like, I would be wildly surprised if we turn on a game, one of these fall Saturdays coming up here, and you look at Drake Maye's stat line, you kind of just say, ooh, tough day for him. Tough day at the office for Drizzy Drake Maye. Like, I call him no drama Drizzy. Because I think in this game, no exception, I think he's going to get his. Now, what does that look like? We'll see. But I think North Carolina is going to want to be a relatively quick strike kind of approach. We'll see who's catching the ball for them when we get to this game. But the point being there, if they're quick strike and South Carolina is able to kind of take the air out of the game a little bit and keep the ball out of his hands, like, that would be a tremendous advantage to South Carolina. So keep an eye on that. In a perfect world, obviously, one of these defenses would step up for you, and you're able to kind of, stick your chest out a little bit there and maybe bow up a little bit and be able to stop one of these guys. But even so, I mean, I think it comes down to the tempo of this game having a tremendous impact on who ends up winning. Now, Drake Maye, like I was just saying, is going to get his. A big factor in him getting his, I think, could be his legs. Keep an eye on that because we talk so much about his arm, and for good reason. Threw for over 4,000 yards last year. All right, my guy can deal. New offensive coordinator. I don't know it's going to matter a ton with what he's bringing to the table, but he also ran for 700 yards last year. True dual threat. Doesn't get talked about enough how good of an athlete he is, so keep an eye on him being able to extend drives if they do have his receiving room covered up and he does have to scramble around and just get a first down. That would drive you crazy as a defensive coordinator, but even so, watch that for Drake Maye and watch that for North Carolina and them sort of maybe setting the tone in this game. So we'll see. Tempo is a big part of it, but if it does become a situation where you're going score for score, like let's just say that the defense is kind of looking like a week 1 defense, looking like they did a season ago, both allowing in the range of 30 points a game. So what happens then is the possessions become exponentially more important. Because if we're scoring give or take on every possession, then stops aren't really the issue. The issue becomes, okay, who can create more possessions? Who can create more turnovers? So you look at Spencer Rattler and say, okay, are we getting the version of you that we saw the first 2/3 of last year? Or are we getting what we saw at the end of last year where he was dialed in? Because he threw 12 interceptions last year. A lot of those came during that first 2/3 I was just mentioning. So for him, how mistake-free is he early on in this game? he may have a phenomenal stat line, but if you look and see, okay, he's got 4 touchdowns, 300 yards. Oh, what's that? 2 interceptions. And that could be the difference for North Carolina getting the better of the Gamecocks in this game. So needless to say, extremely important for him to be dialed in, to play mistake-free. Sounds like Juice Wells is going to be rolling. I'm excited to see what Juju McDowell looks like in this game. So keep an eye on South Carolina and what they do offensively. But again, a lot of it comes down to, if you're going possession for possession, can Spencer Rattler keep you from giving away those possessions? Sounds simplistic, but I think it's emphatically true in this game when it comes to one of the big factors for who ends up winning. And this is my last one I want to talk about here. Special teams, somehow, some way, will have an enormous impact on this game. There's 2 reasons why. The first of which, Shane Beamer's on the sideline for South Carolina. Beamer ball is an absolutely real thing. Kai Kroger is a really freaking good punter for South Carolina. Did not get enough postseason buzz last year when it comes to accolades. Another video for another time. But he was 4 for 4 with 2 touchdowns passing last year. 4 for 4. There's some backup quarterbacks across college football that didn't throw 4 passes. Kai Kroger, 4 for 4, no big deal. I'm sure he talks about that in the locker room. I would too if I were a punter and dealing like that. But the sentiment kind of remains the same. Shane Beamer's not afraid to dial it up here. He's not afraid to let his guys go, maybe push the needle on 4th and 3 and we got a direct snap, or we got Kai Kroger back there throwing the ball, or whatever it ends up being. I would not be shocked in the slightest if we saw them spice it up on the special team side of things for South Carolina. Now, the other factor that special teams is going to play, regardless of what South Carolina does, calling or not calling fake punts or passes or whatever, the big thing with week 1 when it comes to special teams is nearly impossible to duplicate from practice to what you're going to get in the game. Because think about it this way. If you're running down on kickoff and you got 10 grown men plus a kicker, 10 of those grown men running full speed downhill trying to knock the other dude's heads off, you're probably not going full speed in practice. And if you are, you're not doing it very frequently just because it's not a good idea. You don't want to get your guys hurt. Same thing with punt. You go, as live as you can, but you don't typically get a ton of reps at that because it's a huge potential for injury. And so what that means is when you haven't repped it a ton live in practice, leading into week 1, could see some sloppiness, whether it's muffed punts, because that speed is a little bit different than what we saw from a gameplay standpoint, whether it's guys breaking loose because they're not used to, running their lanes on punt or on kickoff or whatever it ends up being. It will impact not just this game, but I think a lot of games across week 1. But I'm especially interested in this game just because of the way that Shane Beamer and the way that he prioritizes special teams within his operation and what that means for North Carolina going forward. So I'm excited to watch this one. Those are the big factors. We're going to predict this game tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. If you click on the On3 YouTube channel, go to the live tab, you may already see our live show schedule, depending on what time you're watching this. But yeah, man, fired up. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're talking ball live in living color. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a minute of it. College football is 1,000,000% here. We got the appetizer, now we got the entree. Let's get after it. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.